Hi guys, Bob Lollard from the Cornish Crusade here. Goodness, it's been a long time, so long in fact that the channel's been rebranded and we're up to 193 subscribers now, even though I haven't uploaded anything in almost 2 years to the day. So given that it's almost been 2 years to the day since I uploaded, I thought I'd share with you a couple of the projects that I've been up to since May 2021. As you can see, there's a fair-sized army of very small men in a uniform that you probably don't recognise. Fret not, for this is the army of Gepsmark, an 1870s themed ImagiNation. Now, if you don't know what an ImagiNation is, it's a fictional country or fictional army, perhaps, slotted into an historical time period for the purpose of wargaming. If you would like to do more reading on the sort of ImagiNation phenomenon, Henry Hyde's old Battle Games articles and his new War Games Campaigns book, to my knowledge, goes into depth about ImagiNations and that kind of niche within a niche of the hobby. Also, pretty much any instance where a YouTuber or a content creator or an article writer has invented a fictional country within which to play a war game, they are pretty much creating an ImagiNation. And if you're interested in seeing something like that, then I believe that John Mollison at The Joy of Wargaming did a couple of 2x2 Napoleonics campaigns with ImagiNations. So with all that being said, let's have a look at the units that I've got here. The army is divided into two brigades. We have here a guards brigade, and we have over here an infantry brigade. So 2 units in the guards brigade, 3 units in the infantry brigade, and also some specialist units. We have some skirmishers up here. We have an artillery cannon at the back there, and then we have some leaders and characters. So with that being said, where have these models come from? So every single model that you see in front of you here has come from Pendragon Miniatures, which, as far as I'm concerned, are the very best in 10mm miniatures. All of these models are 10mm miniatures, that is 10mm from the soles of the feet to the eyes of the model. The bulk of the line infantry, which you can see here, are 1870s Hanoverians from the Pendragon Franco-Prussian War line. But most of the officers, banner bearers and musicians, plus some of the mounted officers that you can see, like this particular chap here, come from their Napoleonic Wars British range. And then if we want to go over to the Guards Regiment over here, they look a bit peculiar, and that is because the vast majority of them, being mountain troops or shock troops in my kind of head canon for the imagination of Gepsmark, actually come from their World War II French range. They are French line infantry with rifles. That might seem a little bit strange. It might seem a little bit anachronistic to have World War II French line infantry standing in as shock troops in an 1870s fictional nation, but I like anachronistic things, and that's why I've given all of them goblin green bases, and I hate grimdark aesthetics. So the artillery is actually a World War I heavy gun, and the crew are also come from that same kit, and the officers once again come for the most part from the Napoleonic British line. So we have, if you can see my finger over here, we have a general over here looking very trendy and dandy with his yellow feather. And we've got this chap here, I believe his name was Hopton or something similar, but in this case, he's currently a mounted chaplain with a gaudy green, bright green umbrella tucked under his arm. The last models that we need to care about are these chaps here, the skirmishers. These are actually also standard 1870s Hanoverian line infantry. All I've done is I've reversed the color scheme that you can see here on the line infantry. So whereas these chaps here have skeleton horde contrast tunics and militarum green contrast trousers, over here our skirmishers have the Militarum green tunics and Skeleton Horde, I think mixed with some Agaros Dunes trousers. So it's just inverted the colour scheme to separate them from the line infantry, alongside, of course, the different bases. And then finally, the last model that we need to worry about is this mysterious fellow in the middle. So he is, in fact, actually a sorcerer or a seer, just in case I wanted to add some kind of fantasy or fantastical elements to the Force, depending on what game I'm playing. And he is actually a Pendraken model of Merlin from their Dark Ages range. And as you can see, I painted him up in the Gepsmark colours with Skeleton Horde and Militarum Green, just to tie him in to the rest of the Force. And so that there, 2 brigades and a couple of secondary units and leaders, is the full army so far. The one thing that I think I should probably mention is the basing. You can probably see that they're based in a bit of an odd fashion. All of the main infantry units are based 3 to a base, with 5 bases to a regiment. And then the skirmishers here are based on individual 10mm bases. And the leaders on horses are on 20mm bases. And the cannon at the back is on a 40mm base. Now, why have I based them like that? Well, I found that basing style would actually be the most versatile. I'm just going to move this back so I can show you what I mean. I found it to be the most versatile for the different rule systems that I had in my collection that I wanted to use. So first and foremost of those rule sets would be the men who would be kings from the Osprey Wargames series. Now, if we were to use the Gepsmark men 3 to a base, then it would mean that 4 bases would enable me to field a unit of standard infantry, European infantry or irregular infantry. Now, perhaps to delineate between the regular and irregular infantry, I could use, say, the base with the flag to represent regular and without the flag to represent irregular. But that would mean that using those 5 bases, I could create a unit of 12 men with 1 stand left over. Perhaps I could combine with other leftover stands to create another unit, just depending on what I need at the time. But so that would be the Force being used for the men who would be kings. And that would be quite an accessible way to use the Force as I have them now. The second rule set I'd be wanting to use this Force for, and is actually the original reason why I based them 3 models to a base and assembled them in regiments of 5 bases, is for Blaster Magazine's Sludge rule set, written by Sean Sutter. This is also the reason why I included a sorcerer in my Force and a mounted priest, is because the Sludge war game is essentially a kind of grimdark or fantastical black powder war game. So you have your regiments lined up with muskets and whatnot, but then you also have monsters and you have sorcerers and you have the healing powers of faith, all playing a part within the war game. I've been playing some solo games of Sludge over the last couple of months, and that's been really, really enjoyable. So yeah, that would also be a fine use for that 10mm Force, would be Blaster Magazine's Sludge Wargame rule set by Sean Sutter. And then finally, of course, the Warlord Games shaped elephant in the room. I could not assemble a Black Powder themed army without, of course, using it for Black Powder 2nd edition. This is obviously the top dog in a lot of Napoleonic and 18th and 19th century wargaming rule sets. So, of course, I would be able to use this Force for Black Powder. It might seem a bit strange to have 5 bases to a unit. It would mean that it would be difficult for me to represent units, say, forming square. But I do believe that it would be fine in representing units in line, in column, or in attack formation or attack column. And yeah, so I believe that I could use this Force as I have it now, 2 brigades strong with some extra units for Black Powder, for Sludge, and for the men who would be kings. Now, this army isn't actually finished. There are still a few things that I would like to add to round out this Force. And first and foremost of these, don't know if you can see it in the bag, is I have another 6 1870s Hanoverian infantry, which I intend to paint up as yet more light infantry or skirmisher infantry. So that would mean I would have 2 small units of skirmishers, which I can then use particularly in sludge, but also perhaps combine them to make 1 regular sized unit in black powder 2nd edition. The second item that I want to include comes from, I believe that's BP11, so that's the Napoleonic British range, again from Pendraken, and this is 16 hussars, which I would like to create 2 small units of light cavalry with for the army of Gepsmark. Now, I'm thinking that if I was to use those and paint them in a particularly interesting scheme, perhaps with lots of bright and vivid colours that are tangentially related to the Gepsmark colours, I could create a really dazzling pair of units, which would really be nice showpieces for the entire army against that backdrop of dark green and beige, really. So 2 regiments of light cavalry to really give the army some mobility, because at the moment it's very, very foot heavy. But then also I have here, as you can see, I've just spray painted these. I have 3 more heavy guns. I have crews, but they're upstairs at the moment. And so yes, I intend to create 3 more heavy batteries of artillery for the army of Gepsmark. Now, the reason why I want to have 4 guns instead of just 1 or 2 is because under the black powder rules, I've seen this in games played by, I believe it's Seventh Son on YouTube, that whenever you have a gun battery represented just by a single gun, they really have very little purpose on the battlefield. They tend to be quite ineffectual when it comes to dealing with opposing units, and they don't really represent the kind of power that artillery had on the battlefield. Now, the way that Seventh Son, I believe it was, solved that problem was by increasing the battery size from 1 gun to 2 guns. So, by this logic, if I have 2 batteries of 2 guns, it means that when I play games of black powder, it should mean that I have an effective artillery arm to the force, and it means that if I'm playing games of sludge, I can absolutely demolish all of the enemies in front of me by including 4 field guns in the force. I believe you can only field 1 gun in the Men Who Would Be Kings, so I only painted 1 up to start with. That's about it, guys. I might show you some of the other minis that I've painted in a different video, from this time that I've been away. It's been nearly 2 years to the day that I've been away, so I'm really glad to be able to show you what I've been painting in that 2-year interim. And so I'll try and show you something else in another video perhaps, but then I'd also like to try and record a solo battle report. I've been doing a lot of solo gaming recently, and I'd really like to include you guys in that process. Now, I've never recorded a battle report before. I've never recorded a game before. So we'll see if I manage to do it. But until next time, friends, it's been great to film a video again, and it's great to be back. And I can't wait to get back into making videos, sharing them with you all, and reconnecting with the community, as I feel like I've fallen away a little in the last couple of years. But until next time, guys, God bless, and cheers.